Hi, if you're not helping this.
So, doctor, should we start? Or is showing this live on YouTube?
Okay, we are live on YouTube. Doctor.
Yeah, we are live.
Oh, yeah, it says live on YouTube.
So guys, sorry for the delay. I know we've delayed more than half an hour. We will start this now. We are live on YouTube. Hello Patrick. Hello Yogi Sakha. Friends, my name is Dr. Saurabh Palekar. I'm an orthopedic surgeon and the director of Holistic Care Center. What is holistic care? We as doctors are the new kind of doctors who do not believe that human is made of only body. We believe that we humans are made of body, mind, and soul. So hence, we believe that we should treat all of these aspects together, and only treating bodily things like the medicine does will not help you completely. Today with us, we have two very eminent personalities from the world of holistic medicine. First, and my partner, Yogi Sakha. Yogi Sakha is a holistic health and happiness coach, helping people transform their lives using fundamentals of yoga, mindfulness, nutrition, and brain function. He has a diverse experience in wellness industry, which includes working in the US for 3 years, specializing in nutritional science. Yogi believes that health and happiness are natural outcomes of the right relationship with body and self. He is my partner and works with me hand in hand at the Holistic Care Center. And today's guest, Dr. Patrick Garrett. Dr. Garrett has a successful functional lifestyle medicine practice in Wichita, Kansas, which focuses on reversing acute and chronic conditions naturally. He is a national speaker and has maintained multiple specialties in clinical nutrition, functional medicine, and integrated medicine. He is the chairman of the board of American Academy of Functional Medicine, the American Board of Functional Medicine, and he's the advisor of several other boards. He's a member of the Harvard Medical School Department of Postgraduate Studies and completed numerous educational courses in the lifestyle medicine from Harvard Medical School and Yale Medical School. Dr. Garrett has a unique expertise and is sought by patients from all over the world Welcome, guys. So
Thank
my
you.
question is to you, Mr. Patrick, Dr. Patrick Garrett. What is inflammation and what are the major inflammatory problems we're going to talk about today, and how do herbs help in fighting inflammation? Please.
Yes, thank you. Well, so with inflammation, it's this immunological response that we have to any kind of threat or damage to the body. So it's your body's way of overcoming infections or overcoming damage or injury or chronic insults to the body. And the major processes that we have for that, that most people can relate to, are probably like aches and pains, like back aches that are very, very common, I'm sure here and there. Something like arthritis or inflammation of the joints, that's a huge one, since like knees and ankles support the upper part of the weight of the body. We see lots of damage and kind of inflammatory processes, especially with weight-bearing joints like knees. And then digestive disorders are also very common, and it's a, I specialize in reversing Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, kind of autoimmune conditions too. And inflammation is the base of all that. Even, back in, I think it was 1860, or it was 1863, Dr. Rudolf Virchow had theorized that all disease was inflammation. And so if you fast forward all the way to today, we know that all disease is inflammation. So we're going to hit those top 3 or 4 things, but the reality is everything that's chronic is something we're chronically doing, and the immune system is responding in this outcome of inflammatory processes. Are you there?
Yeah, Dr. Saurabh.
Okay. Yes.
I was checking with Dr. Saurabh if
Yes,
he
yes,
is,
Dr. Patrick. So we're mainly going to focus our talk today on backaches and digestive disorders and arthritis and mainly most of our viewers are interested in the topic on how to build the immune system during this pandemic. Everyone right now in India here is stuck in a lockdown. We are expecting that there'll be some relief in the lockdown and we'll be all going back to work. So the infectivity, the transmission of this virus may increase. So people are very keen to know on how the immune system can be made better. So my next question to Mr. Yogi Sakha: how does modern lifestyle increase all of these? Modern lifestyle includes long hours of traveling, inadequate sleep, bad posture, all of these factors, junk food, all, how do these contribute in chronic inflammations?
Thank you very much, Dr. Saurabh. In fact, it is the modern lifestyle which is driving chronic inflammation, and which is responsible for the lifestyle diseases which were not heard of decades before. So when I say chronic inflammation because of poor lifestyle, I mean 3 or 4 most important things. First is lack of physical activity, which is again stress for the body. Then a diet which is loaded with refined flour, refined sugar, preservatives, refined flour, something which the body doesn't take it as a natural form of nourishment. And the third most important thing is related to the stresses of emotions in our relationship, at work, or on a personal level. So this is something which is driving the inflammation on the inflammation in the body in a chronic way. I have I would like to just, I think I'm not able to at this moment, but yeah. So when it comes to inflammation response, as Dr. Patrick mentioned, an inflammation response is a body's natural immune response to any assault or injury which happens, either physical or chemical or emotional. So the first thing which we need to do is cut down on certain foods, on certain lifestyle practices which we have been doing unconsciously, subconsciously, which are driving this inflammation. So what would be those food which we need to cut down? Of course, we're going to add healthy food. We're going to add green plants and herbs in our diet. But the cutting down actually is more important than to the cutting down is more important than to adding good stuff, because if you don't cut down or eliminate the bad stuff which you are putting in our system, then the good stuff which we eat, it's not going to benefit us in a big way. So first of all, cut down on the refined white sugar, cut down on the refined flour products, cut down on the refined oils, vegetable oil, almost to an extent of eliminating them in your diet, in your nutrition. And then that itself will take care of your inflammation response, which was chronic and always maintained at a high level. It will try to regulate it on its own. And then after that, we need to add good healthy food which will support even better inflammation and which will support better healing of your organs, of your tissues, even on a cellular level. So this is how, if we see on the nutrition level, we can work on managing our inflammation and managing also, along with the inflammation, many other aspects of our health, whether it is our immunity, whether it is our heart health, whether it is even our weight management, brain function, because at the core of our well-being lies a proper response to the stress, or a proper inflammatory response, which needs to be regulated by these lifestyle changes. And that's what we here at Holistic Care educate people to different ways we can manage our uh, uh, lifestyle through physical aspect of food, exercise, mental aspects of meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and a spiritual aspect of finding purpose and value in their life, what they really are passionate about.
So yes, definitely, Yogi Saka. So this is the kind of a revolution we youngsters are bringing in to the medical fraternity. We prefer going to these natural methods of treatment rather than just popping pills, which are not natural, which are not fixing anything. They're just fixing a symptom. Which takes me to another question. Now that we know the process of inflammation, the question arises is, what are these foods exactly which cause these kind of inflammatory reactions? So, Patrick, can I ask you to address this?
Yes, of course. So, with inflammation, I love what Yogi said, because really the goal is to not cause problems rather than how to treat problems. So the core of like our practice is functional lifestyle medicine, which is really know how the body works, know what we do to mess it up, and stop messing it up. So a lot of times we kind of mess things up and then we say, well, what can we add? But the reality is, the less damage we cause, the less we have to treat. And then the other big part of that really is just create a lifestyle that's consistent with life and longevity without gimmicks and nonsense. And so the biggest part of your body, like every biochemical process in your body, came from food. Every single cell in your body comes from food, from the brain to the bone. It's all derived from food. So then we are just biochemistry that eats biochemistry to support our biochemistry. So when it comes to the inflammatory process, we're going to have this kind of like positive and negative effect. So are we eating things that are anti-inflammatory so then we don't have to eat a bunch of anti-inflammatory stuff to overdo that? And then are we eating anti-inflammatory stuff to prevent the inflammation? So like Yogi was saying, much of what we do, we just cause. So any kind, 3 out of 4 people are suffering from chronic disease and they chronically manage it, but it's not true everywhere in the world. So in the US, like where we just create this horrible diet and then basically take lots of supplements, food should be the first. So even Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said, let medicine be your food, food be your medicine. But more importantly, he said, never treat by the chemist's pot that which we can treat by diet first. So even back in 300 BC, it was don't cause problems. So when you look at anti-inflammatory food, so we have some that are very specific that we use therapeutically, which we'll talk about, to regulate those 3 main pathways for pain and inflammation. But for the general anti-inflammatory diet, it's very simple. There's our staples always fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, legumes, and dark leafy greens. And then if you want to have meat, anti-inflammatory meat, so fatty fish or grass-fed, grass-finished animals. So more specifically, turmeric. About half the world eats turmeric on a regular basis. Turmeric is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories that there is, and it should be just in pretty much all your foods and sauces and soups. Something like ginger is a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory. So it actually is the basis of what we make Vioxx and Mobic and Celebrex, or these medications which we'll talk about that are horribly detrimental. Like, they increase your risk of heart attack by 34%. But ginger actually deplaques your arteries and gets rid of the inflammation the exact same way through regulating COX-2 and 5-LOX pathways. So ginger just spices up your food, but ginger tea, adding ginger little bites to it, ginger kombucha, if you guys do that. Olive oil, so there's lots of different oils you can use. Most countries started off with like really anti-inflammatory oils. The average American over here, we eat 40 times the inflammatory foods as we eat anti-inflammatory foods. But oils are one of the basis of anti-inflammation. So even the process of arachidonic acid that then goes down and goes through those 3 doorways that creates pain and inflammation, and then the interpretation of pain and inflammation, it all starts with PUFAs. So, oils can either contribute to inflammation or they can contribute to anti-inflammation through the main omega-3, omega-6 pathway. So what type of oils we use to cook with, or use as salad dressings, or use to marinate, makes a huge inflammatory difference in the body. So olive oil is a very good staple that is traditional, is sustainable, and it has a short shelf life. You want to buy what you use in maybe a month. So you want to buy smaller bottles of oil and use it more frequently. And then things like grapes or any kind of berry. So as Yogi and I were talking about, the whole basis of inflammation really is immune. So things like antioxidants, so eating the rainbow of colors of food is one of the first ways we actually downregulate the inflammatory process and the end damage. So when we talk about back pain and arthritis and even immune function, that very basis of damage to actual tissue starts with oxidation. So any of the antioxidant foods, citrus and fruits and vegetables and berries of wide colors and varieties, is one of the first most potent ways that we knock down the inflammatory process and the immune reaction from that. And as you were talking about with COVID or this coronavirus, the new coronavirus here, anything that you're doing to suppress inflammation with diet also is going to boost that immune system, which is why the American Cancer Association said that 5 servings of fruits and vegetables pretty much reversed 80 to 90 to 100% of all disease, including things like cancer. So below that, you have things like just immune system reactions, and that means it's profoundly effective for boosting your immune system. So you can't take away from inflammation versus immune system with this. So whether we're talking about knee pain or not getting a virus or responding to a virus, it's the same book with that. So bananas also are hugely anti-inflammatory, which we wouldn't normally think about that. Nutmeg or any of those spices, herbs, some of the spices that you use are some of the most profoundly potent ones in small doses. And then of course green tea and dark leafy greens are also very wonderful anti-inflammatories. One of the biggest things that they do is they have quercetin in there. And quercetin, apples and onions are some of the biggest suppliers of that. You can also buy it as a supplement, but you just eat it. But it blocks tumor necrosis factor just as effective as ibuprofen without killing your kidney and liver in the process. So you look at the American Arthritis Association, they actually are starting to come around to suggest that you should eat lots of greens, dark leafy greens, because it reduces arthritis, because it's so potent, so effective, and we don't have the side effects as we do for medications. And then otherwise, again, reducing free radical damage is one of the biggest proponents of that. When we talk about the actual pathways, that ginger, the turmeric, the fish oils or omega-3s that we get from fruits and vegetables, but also fatty fish, those specifically regulate the 3 doors for pain and inflammation.
Really great information from you, Patrick. So I should say that I am not a practitioner who's been trained in Ayurveda. So Ayurveda and homeopathy are the sciences here from India, which mainly focus on treatment from herbs and medications are derived from natural sources. And all of these years, we practitioners used to ignore this, and the major medicine which is practiced now in India is allopathic medicine, because there is not adequate research backing all of these Ayurvedic medicines. And now coming from you, where you come from, where all of the practice is based, evidence-based, you saying the same things which Ayurveda said all of these years, it's a big surprise for me. Yes. Yes, Patrick.
Well, and it's really surprising, like when I first started in this, I came from the medical side, but we act as if, like when I was lecturing in Thailand at the International Symposium, they had the same problem. They had traditional Thai wellness, and so they just kind of ate well. They had meditation and mindfulness practices. They had lots of movement. And then there was the allure of the Western medicine or the Western diet. And so then they started importing Western ideals. And then all of a sudden people started getting chronic illnesses. And then they imported the Westernized medications to basically chronically manage that. And now there's a big move, like in Thailand, to go back to the old ways, to undo what the Americanism has done to these countries. And it's the same in India. It's the same as every other country where we import these things that basically poison people, cause lots of damage, and then use Westernized medicine to manage it. But all medication, there's 900 synthetic pharmaceuticals, 900, but we've only been doing this for 100 years. And every single one has come from something that naturally occurs. So Mobic is from ginger. Aspirin is from willow bark. Like the wonder drugs that we have, the newest chemotherapeutic for breast cancer is Taxol. It comes from the yew tree, from the bark of the yew tree. So every single medication we think is this profound new creation. All we did was take what worked forever in nature, find one molecule, synthesize it, patent, and sell it back as a medication, and act like this is something new. It's not, or new and legitimate. But the research is profoundly strong for all the stuff that is used to create medication to support the natural stuff that already existed, if that makes sense.
So, yes, Yogi, what would you like to add on this? Yogi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, so I second the thoughts and the rational and the science, the passion which Dr. Patrick was sharing, his knowledge about herbs and health and overall well-being. I stayed in the US for about 3 years, and I was working as a nutritional health coach in one of the premium health food store. And I used to see that there are people coming over there who are passionate about wanting to treat their conditions, whether they were in kind of something related to as common as common cold, to even someone who wants to work on their certain form of tumors or cancers. So this thing, when it comes to the power of plant-based nutrition and what our culture, our Indian tradition culture has explored in a very scientific and detailed way through their studies, that is something which needs to come back in a big way. And as far as what we are dealing right now over here at Holistic Care Center, that we want to integrate these modalities of modern healthcare along with this traditional therapies, where an integrated approach of body, mind, spirit can be given. There are few questions which are coming. In fact, these would be interesting questions if we could actually address those. Dr. Saurabh, if
Yogi, can we address all of the questions? We'll finish this session, and can we address all of these sessions at the end of it? I know.
Oh yeah,
enthusiasm.
sure.
So I would like to go ahead, Yogi. This question is for you. So we have not enumerated what is the simplest way to identify which are inflammation causing foods. So Patrick had put light on foods which are anti-inflammatory. So I want you to mention and how can our viewer understand very simply which are inflammation causing food, the processed foods, and what is the psychology, because these are really the tasty ones, right? Like the cakes, the pastries, the ice cream. What is the psychology behind staying away from these foods? I would like you to address this issue.
Yeah, so of course, if you know the enemy in a better way, you can take care of the enemy. So of course, how to identify this inflammatory food? In fact, these foods are available all over the market, and even at our home we buy them. Anything which comes in a very well packaged container or a plastic pack which has got more than 3, 4, 5 ingredients, we need to be really cautious about these food. What kind of rule of hand I go by is something very it sounds simple, but it is quite effective if you see it this way: that if you take water and if you add if you add refined flour to it, if you add a refined sugar to it, then that refined sugar would melt in the water very easily, right? So that which is melting in the water very easily, and now you put jaggery in it, it takes a long time for the jaggery to melt and dissolve in the water. So one can go by this way if one want to understand that, if you put cookies, if you put pastas, if you put certain food which gets dissolved in water very easily, most of these definitely are made up of refined flour, refined sugar, and refined edible oil. These food get really broken down into fast sugar and their preservatives, which cannot hold them in the water, or when we eat them, they cannot hold themselves in the system also. So they spike insulin and they spike blood sugar. So this is one thing which we need to know, that foods which break down very easily, very rapidly, mostly are causing high inflammation. For example, even you take a sprouts or apple or any fruit, they do not break down that easily. They have got their own vitamins, minerals, fibers, and plant compounds which hold them, so that their release of nutrients and their release of sugar, their release of vital compounds is gradual. It happens as a slow release. On the other hand, you add a cookie or a cake, it just breaks down easily because it is lacking of those nutrients, and it is lacking of those compounds which are natural compounds. So eliminating these artificial, mostly highly processed food products are very important when it comes to cutting down and not allowing our body to have these damaging food in our system. Another thing which you asked was how we can work on our mind, or how we can be strong with our mindset. That people who have got addicted to the stimulation which they get when they eat that kind of processed food, whether a cookie, a chocolate, or whatever they have been enjoying, because they just find it pleasurable. What is the way? So there is always a way. For example, you can replace your first thing when it comes to working with the mind, we have to see that you don't really uh, go entirely 100% in terms that is you don't try to take over the mind in a complete way. You have to go in a gradual way. So first thing, try to replace your food which you are having, like for example, try to replace your sugar with jaggery. Try to replace your refined oil with cold press oil, or physical refined oil, which the physical refined oil is the best oil which is not chemically refined. Then replace your refined flour with multigrain flour. So you can actually work with your pleasure sensation. Your healthy food need not be tasteless. It need not be kind of uh, you can enjoy healthy food, and also you can derive the health benefit out of it. This is what I'm trying to say, because even I enjoy having food which is tasty, which is pleasurable. So one did not try to prevent oneself, or try to kind of force on oneself the kind of experience of eating good food and the good smell, good sight, and the good taste which we get. It's just the matter of replacement of this, rather than trying to kind of some way forcing our attitude and mindset or our will, because that can drive one towards even extreme cases of frustration, depression, and extreme cases of body image and wrong relation with food. So this is something very important to be noted. With the same food, with the same taste, you can replace it with some better choices. And mindfulness plays a big role. Every time you eat food, take a couple of breaths and tell yourself, I am eating this food to nourish the body. I'm eating this food so that the body is going to provide me with nourishment. And this way, if you can talk to your food, talk to your body. I practice it this way. I coach my clients also in this way, that health is a relationship which we have with our food and with our body. So when you talk to a vegetable, when you talk to a fruit which you are eating, which is directly coming from the natural source, from nature, you are being in the state of gratitude towards the entire nature, because the nature has provided you with that. So this is a big factor of gratefulness and mindfulness one can incorporate and start with eating food, because we spend only 10-15 minutes eating food. How about making it a practice of transforming our relationship with food in this kind of way?
Really great explanation, Yogi. And I hope our viewers are going to profit out of this session a lot. Since we've spoken about the profits of these anti-inflammatory herbs and natural therapies and foods which are good for health. So we have a lot of natural vegetables available in India, and Indian food industry is still not that industrialized like in the US. The processed foods which are available right now, you can always find naturally available fruits at the small markets, small vendors, and you can buy them. Indians have a lot of vegetables on their plate, but I really need you to emphasize on the quantity of vegetables a person should eat. And if you look at the Indian diet, it consists of rotis, chapatis, a lot of processed carbs, which even the WHO has not given any emphasis. These are processed grains which we consume on a daily basis. So, what is your opinion about these foods, roti, chapati, and their portion size compared to the vegetables on a plate?
This is to me.
Yes, Yogi.
Okay. So when it comes to portion or quantity related to nutritious food like vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, and pulses, I leave it upon the individual based on his requirement. Of course, the most important thing is to consider his lifestyle, his physical activity, the way in which maybe also in terms of his profession. For example, there would be people who work out quite heavy, who are into sports activity, and who are young athletes. They may need more carbs. They may need kind of certain carbs which will help them sustain their athletic performance. So quantity can always be adjusted based on their individual personal constitution of the body, and also based on their personality, and also based on their profession. However, for general population, yes, I do agree that Indians um, predominantly have a lot of carbohydrate intake through their chapatis and rice, rotis and rice. And that is somewhere, as I said, chapati, you add to water, it will break down very fast. Rice, you add to water, it will break down very fast. Now, what you can do, add to chapati, if you want to increase its nutrient value, add to chapati more grains, which would be, the one which we get, the multi-grain. You can have those grains and fibers, and then that chapati or that bhakri or that roti will not break down very easily. So that is something again which we need to consider, that uh, we have to replace it, or we have to add something. You can even add a vegetable juice, like you take a spinach, or you take any green vegetable, or you take a radish, and you make a kind of a juice out of it. You just kind of extract, get the extract of it, put it in a mixer grinder, and use that water and that extract to make your rotis. You use some salt, some cumin, some jeera, some kind of spices, and you make a roti which is made with this green vegetable instead of using plain water. Now, what you have done to the roti, you have added a nutrient value to that roti. It will have the green vegetable in it also, and it will give you the right amount of carbs also, which is needed. When it comes to quantity, I would say yes, try to have more of the greens, uh, uh, vegetables. Try to have more of the uh, green leafy vegetables or cruciferous vegetables also. When it comes to cruciferous, I like to specify cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, radish. These vegetable help the body to support their detox in a powerful way. So, including these vegetables, a serving of around 5 to 6 cups throughout the day. But it may not be easy for people to grasp in the Indian kind of standards in terms of the 5 to 6 cup, but keep it like in a plate. At least keep uh, more than uh, more than half of your, at least half or less than half of your plate filled with something kind of vegetables or salads, with which will give you that nutrition. and even make your rotis, even make your rice in such a way that it adds to its nutrient value. So that is something which can be taken care of when it comes to the quantity of food, and especially the quantity of green vegetables and these dense nutrient based food which we are supposed to eat and get the benefit out of.
So Patrick, just to update you, sorry, I did not mention this for our viewers from the US. So what are rotis? Rotis are the equivalent of bread, and it's mostly, if you compare it to the American or European foods, it's processed bread, not the whole grain kind of bread. So what would you like to add something to this, Patrick?
One other question too is, what is japote?
So chapati is an equivalent of bread. So it is a filler.
Okay,
It is
okay.
a easily digestible carbohydrate.
Yeah.
It's made of
Like
wheat.
a naan.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah.
Naan is a refined flour. Chapati is a whole wheat flour.
Okay. Okay. Now I know. I'm on the same page. One of the things is the University of Colorado School of Medicine did this study to kind of understand, it's not always the food that causes the problem. It's always what we do to it, to make it cheaper and more processed because it's more profitable doing that. But when you eat whole grain, even like fruit, like a lot of times in America, we blame fruit for obesity, and Americans consume 150 pounds of added sugar to our diet, and then we blame fruit, right? But the research showed that 80% of the sugar that's in food is bound to the fiber that we don't digest. So you have digestible fiber, undigestible fiber. And then that sugar and fiber compound makes something called fructooligosaccharides. And we actually sell this as a product instead of just eating it as food. But basically that sugar and fiber feeds your gut bacteria. So those 750,000 to 1,000 species bacteria. And then those use that sugar instead of going to your bloodstream to make B vitamins, to make you healthier and happier and more energetic. But it also makes something called butyrate. And butyrate is one of the most new and upcoming kind of chemotherapeutics that we have for the immune system. Where most chemotherapeutics shut off the immune system, butyrate actually makes it work. But it comes from just naturally occurring sugars in fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, legumes, greens, with those fiber. And so that butyrate feeds DNA polymerase, and DNA polymerase edits out mutations in your cell and in your DNA at the rate of 10,000 times per cell per day. So 100 trillion times 10,000 just in one day. And so as Yogi was talking about that idea of like decreasing the bad, increasing the good, we won't be perfect. You won't have a perfect diet. We don't make it easy. And so just knowing that the more whole grain and whole food you eat, it literally changes your DNA at the DNA level at the rate of 10,000 times 100 trillion cells a day. Like that's an amazing and profound thing. So even when we cause little bits of damage, we're always genetically designed to reverse that damage. So like arthritis, backaches, all those things are reversible on a daily basis based on what we eat, drink, breathe, rub on our skin, and how we stress. So all the same concepts that Yogi's talking about, So that's what I'd like to add to that is really that whole grain, that fiber part that's added to that dramatically impacts your immune system, inflammation, and quality of life.
Thank you, Patrick. So at the end of this session, we've missed out on one very important thing, which is the side effects of these anti-inflammatory medications, what are used by medical professionals. I use them very often. I try to use them judiciously and as per how the patient's current condition is. And I use it only on emergency basis. On the long term, I try to avoid them. I try to use more natural things. So I would like you to emphasize on what kind of side effects are there in the anti-inflammatory medicines which are used.
Yes. Well, so, you know, that all inflammation starts with this insult or injury, right? And then it goes there's three doorways by which it uses to create pain inflammation. So that's COX-1 or cyclooxygenase 1. So that's one doorway. Cyclooxygenase 2 is the second doorway. And then 5-lipoxidase or 5-LOX is the third doorway. And all three of those lead to that concept of conceptualization of pain and inflammation for us. So there's the way that we do it in kind of westernized medicine is shut that pathway down, shut those doors, and then you can cause damage but not result in inflammation. Now, when we look at food and all the stuff we've been talking about, that downregulates it from the beginning, but we do have treatment. So, you know, if you do surgery, there's an inherent amount of damage that comes from that the body has to overcome and heal. So then we say, well, do we do medication? Do we do natural? And you know, over the last 100 years, we've really kind of went away from natural to synthetics, but the synthetics are derived from the natural process. So, and you know, in your practice, just like every other practice, you know, the patients may want medication management, and that's okay because you know, it's not what we want always for the patient. It's really making sure that we're meeting their kind of request and requirements. So not everybody's on board with this. But once you know those pathways, it makes a huge difference. So if you look at the COX-1 pathway, that's typically where things start. So COX-1 inhibitors, like aspirin, it came from willow bark, which doesn't cause kidney and liver failure. But if you take aspirin or ibuprofen or any of those COX-1 inhibitors that regulate that pathway, the #1 side effect is kidney failure. So aspirin, ibuprofen are the leading cause of kidney failure in the United States. People that use acetaminophen, which is not a COX-1, but it's a NSAID for pain and inflammation. According to PDR, we don't know why it works, but it's the #1 cause for liver failure in the United States. So kidney, liver, right? And then the other problem with regulating those pathways is they don't just regulate pain inflammation. The COX-1 regulates things like clotting and also mucus production. So 70% of those that take ibuprofen on a regular basis will end up with a GI bleed within 2 weeks of that. And that's because the only thing that prevents your stomach from eating your stomach is a big wall of mucus between the acid and enzymes and your own tissue. But COX-1 regulates mucus production, which means if we systematically, chronically shut that off, we then make less mucus that erodes that protection. We start eating at our stomach and we end up perforating blood vessels, and then we can't shut off the bleeding because we're taking a medication that blocks the clotting mechanism. So then people end up having this slow bleed and they feel fatigued. And that's why we see research shows that for every 10,000 people that take ibuprofen, or say aspirin, for every 10,000 take aspirin for benefits, 15,000 people will die from the side effects. So that's not a very good exchange when you compare it to like willow bark. So that's a more safer bet. But willow bark, that half-life is 2.5 hours, so half of it's gone in 2.5 hours, and the peak plasma is about 2 hours. So again, you're going to get relief in about 2 hours, but 2 hours and a half of it's going to be gone from your body. So it's not a very good pathway anyways, even from the natural side. If you look at the COX-2 pathway, so when they say, well, we can't keep doing ibuprofen because we're going to end up killing you from the side effects, then they switch to COX-2 pathway though. So that second doorway. And then COX-2 traditional medicines are like Vioxx, Mobix, Celebrex. But Vioxx got pulled from the market years ago because it killed too many people. So it actually led to about 35,000 deaths that were unreported to the FDA. 140,000 heart attacks were just due to Vioxx. while it was allowed. And then the study showed that it increased your risk of cardiovascular disease by 34%. Like, that's huge, especially in a country like America where heart disease has been the #1 killer for the last 100 years. Yeah, that's not a great idea. So we have all these people eating the inflammatory diet, chronically managing inflammation, but then having heart attacks in their pursuit to synthetically manage it. So the other way of regulating that pathway then and not causing heart attacks is through turmeric and ginger. So those two basic cheap roots actually regulate the COX-2 pathway very effectively, but they actually deplaque your artery so you have less risk of heart attack and stroke. Now, the key to this too is the half-life is 6 to 7 hours, which is double to triple what willow bark is. So that means you're getting at least 6 hours, if not more, of relief from that pain. And it only takes an hour to get the peak plasma levels with turmeric and ginger. The key is the turmeric's really good, but the actual curcuminoids that regulate pain through the COX-2 are about 10% of the root. So if you take that as a supplement for specifically pain, you want to take something that says 95% curcuminoid, so it's the most effective. Otherwise, when you look at taking 300 to 500 milligrams, if you took just turmeric root, well, then you got to do 10 times that amount. So you really want to make sure it's most therapeutic. And then there's things like tetrahydrocurcuminoids, which is 250% more concentrated and more therapeutic. So that's got a long half-life or a long sustainability for therapeutic care, and a pretty short plasma, or pretty short to get to plasma level. Same thing with ginger. Ginger is about the same. And then when you look at the third pathway, so usually they go from aspirin, well, we're killing you with that, so then we'll do the COX-2, but we can't do that for very long because you're going to have a heart attack. So then they usually do the third pathway, or the third door for pain and inflammation, which is the 5-lipid oxidase, which is the 5-LOX pathway. And that's where you see things like steroid injections or prednisone, which is basically, again, shut down one of the most powerful regulators for pain and inflammation. But there's a powerful consequence to that, because people will gain 60 to 80 pounds very quickly. They'll get type 2 diabetes very quickly. It's high cortisol. Steroids or kind of cortisol, and cortisol suppresses pain, but cortisol also raises blood sugar. So then you see destruction of all the microvasculature of kidneys, eyes, pancreas, nerves. And so you see this whole systematic shutdown or damage that's going on, let alone it actually suppresses the immune system, which isn't really what we want to do during a pandemic too. But natural things that regulate that are things like boswellia. And boswellia is the active ingredient from frankincense. And frankincense, I believe Yogi said in there, it's called Luban oil. But that's a very, very powerful pain reliever. So the oil you can put directly on the joint. So if you have arthritis or back pain, you can literally rub this in there. Your skin's oil, this is oil, it goes in there and causes therapeutic effect. But you can take boswellia, which is the active ingredient for internal, then it has to go everywhere and hopefully gets therapeutic to that joint, just like you do any medication. Now, its half-life is 6 hours. So this is a long sustained treatment. And then also the peak is about 4.5 hours. So if you take boswellia, it's going to take 4 or 5 hours versus the 1 hour for the COX-2 pathways. Now, that being said, if you look at something like omega-3s, this is your like heavy hitter for pain inflammation, especially post-surgery, post-damage, post-trauma, because omega-3, even like 500 milligrams to 1500 milligrams, all the way to 5,000 or 15,000 milligrams are typically well tolerated. Basically, it's just a bowel tolerance. So it regulates that same pathway. Actually, I'll change that. 5-LOX, or sorry, boswellia and omega-3 actually regulate 2 of the 3 doorways for pain and inflammation. So the COX-2 and the 5-LOX. That's why these are such powerful supplements to take or foods to eat. But with omega-3s, get this. So the half-life is 37 to 46 hours. It takes 4 days to get half of the therapeutic effect out of your body. Now, it takes about 5 to 8 hours to get it to the peak plasma levels, which means you might start off with a turmeric and then add in a fish oil. So as the turmeric starts tapering off, the fish oil then lasts 3 or 4 days. So then every time you take another dose, you are maintaining pain-free and allowing the body to heal without the chronic damage that's going on. So those are that's how I approach that. When you look at what are the therapeutic things that we can do that are the most potent, most therapeutic, but some of it's based on a little bit of timing to get the most therapeutic effect.
So this was very informative, Dr. Patrick, and also scary for guys practicing modern medicine, I guess. So there are a lot of questions coming up, and it's past 9 p.m. because of the technical issues we had in the beginning of the session. So we'll start taking questions. The most common question, we've had a lot of questions, so I don't know if we can address all of them. But the commonest question asked by most of our viewers is, what can we do during this pandemic? Which kind of herbs can help us increase our immunity? Can you take this, Dr. Patrick?
Yeah, so this is an interesting time because this is a repeat. So coronavirus is one of 200 cold viruses that we get exposed to all the time. This novel COVID-19 is just a little tweak, kind of like a bad guy robbing a bank, and now he's wearing a mustache and glasses, right? So your immune system handles this exactly the same way it does every single flu season, every single cold season. It just will take advantage of, say, wearing that little disguise to trick the immune system for a little bit. So which means you better be healthy. You better be healthy mind, body, spirit, diet, all that. But since this is not a new thing, we've been through corona mutations before, especially SARS, so the acute respiratory syndrome version of these coronaviruses. We've also been through pandemics of H1N1s, or H's and N's of the influenza A's. And what's really interesting is we already have tons of research on how we can get rid of viruses all the way up to coronavirus, all the way up to SARS mutation of those viruses. And what was interesting was that something like Tamiflu, which is pretty much the only real medication there is for viral infections, but your immune system, there's no antibiotics. It's just you take things that stimulate your body to do its job. So it needs to be able to recognize, block attachment, and destroy these viral infections. And it uses tumor necrosis factors, interferons, and cytotoxic cells to do this. So the Tamiflu was actually based off of pine needle. So it's an arabidinoglycan activity that takes place. So Chinese star anise, which is wonderful to add to food, that is basically the natural version of Tamiflu. Pine needles from trees are the original Tamiflu. So you can make pine needle tea. Research shows that echinacea does the same thing, and it'll decrease the viral duration by 23%. But turmeric actually showed that it would decrease the viral load by 90%. So echinacea and turmeric are some of the most inexpensive, most therapeutic, well-researched, well-documented through the last pandemics to show that they work exceptionally well. And what's really interesting is there was a lot of research published through the last SARS that came through the world. And they did the research in China at the hospitals, at the front line workers, right? So all the doctors, the nurses, and they found that traditional Chinese medicine, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for Ayurvedic, but things like astragalus were 100% effective for frontline workers during the last Corona SARS event. in 2003. And I don't know why we don't apply those things today, but they typically used 1 to 5 different combinations of these herbs. And there was study after study from different hospitals, different clinics, but all of them, from 1,000 to 3,000 participants, were 100% effective. And so your immune system is constantly designed to outwit and accommodate to coronavirus every single year. And so it's only the most susceptible, the most stressed people that with the worst diets that are going to be the most susceptible to these viruses. But you can take specific herbs that naturally boost your immune system even more and are highly effective.
I would like to quickly mention what Dr. Patrick was mentioning about the star seed, right? What is it? Star flower?
Oh, star anise.
Star anise, yeah. It's quite common in Indian kitchen. Chakra phool, and we use it as spices in making biryanis or flavored rice, also pulao. So that is the quite common in Indian kitchen, along with various different hundreds of herbs which are found. Turmeric, ginger, uh, uh, cinnamon. There's an entire, like a small mini pharmacy in an Indian kitchen if you actually visit an Indian home. And this is something great because we all in India, and those who are born and raised over here or may even have migrated outside elsewhere in the Western country, they will always have in them, maybe it's because the way we are brought up or in the genes itself, that they are quite used to using these spices. And when it comes to immune function, I just quickly name a few herbs and spices, especially which can help support our immune function. The most important when it comes to boosting or supporting the immune function is what they call it in Hindi as giloy. Giloy leaf or giloy juice, and also neem leaf or neem juice. Mostly the bitter plants actually stimulate our immune function in a very powerful way. So if one can include certain bitter herbs in their diet, in their daily routine, that's a great way to work on their immune function. Second is working on the stress response as well, so that the stress response is regulated. Another powerful herb which is called as uh, the one which is very common, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha helps supports your immune function and helps supports your stress hormones production as well. And during this time, as you mentioned, when you take curcumin along with certain fatty fish or with some fat source, it uh, it actually enhances its function in a powerful way. Uh, Synergistic value of both these ingredients increase. Similarly, if you're going to take ashwagandha to work on your immunity, or triphala also, triphala, you can try it in the evening time, in the night time, with a half a spoon of ghee, half a spoon of ghee with some warm water. These are really very powerful herbs, and it can help support your immune function in a much better way, especially at this time.
So thank you, Yogi, and thank you, Dr. Patrick. This was really informative. One of the most common asked questions on our portal, we're getting numerous questions, but I don't think we will be able to address all of them. The commonest question is how to manage diabetes, and I've read it. A lot of people come to Dr. Patrick to treat and reverse their diabetes. And I know, Yogi Sakha, you also have a huge experience. So I would like to know both of your views on this topic. Can we start with Dr. Patrick?
Sure. So, Yeah, we actually have a long history of reversing type 2, and it's interesting because type 2 has only been around really since the 1950s. And so as we started eating, from 0 pounds of sugar added to our diet to 10 pounds in 1910 to by 1940, 150 pounds of added sugar to our diet. Like Yogi was saying, like refining our foods down to where they absorb purely as sugar. We started ending up with type 2 diabetes. And so it is not a disease. Diabetes type 2 is a normal expected outcome from an abnormal diet and lifestyle. That's all it is. Your body's response is exactly what it should be. We've never been designed to eat that much sugar. And so all that downregulation of receptor activity, it all comes back when we stop doing what we did to cause the diabetes. So it's all based on really going back to just simple things. So living a diet and lifestyle that's consistent with like life longevity, your movement, you're eating fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and berries and legumes instead of processed foods, and then de-stressing, because your liver actually makes sugar in response to stress. So in America, we're the #1 anxious and depressed country. And so we can eat candy bars or we can stress candy bars, but your diabetes doesn't care. Your body doesn't care. It doesn't care where it gets the sugar from. So that idea of managing stress along with movement, along with intake, is how you reverse diabetes the most effective and efficient way. I'll go to Yogi.
Thank you, Patrick. Please, Yogi.
Yes, I really like what Dr. Patrick mentioned, that diabetes actually is a normal response to our abnormal lifestyle, mostly related to our abnormal or the abuse of food and the abuse of our mind and the imagination power it has to create a stress in our system. And that's how even I see, in fact, all the diseases are nothing but an intelligent adaptation which the body makes on its own for the foolish things which we do to it. So actually, if you see, there are no diseases. It's just like the body is adapting itself. And when it comes to specific question which doctor has asked about how to reverse diabetes, it's just the same thing. Reverse your lifestyle, reverse or go back towards the natural way in which the body is supposed to function. Move more, have more of physical activity, do certain kind of resistance exercises to make your muscles, joint and musculature strong. Cut down the refined flour, sugars, and cut down processed food. Include more of vegetables, green leafy vegetables. Include more of seasonal fruits. Have healthy and good quality of fat from seeds, nut, fatty fish, and have a good quality protein from those sources as well. As far as the herb is concerned, yes, use herbs also when it comes to managing your sugar. Especially, it has been shown that herbs like cinnamon and herbs like the the one which we is very bitter tasting over here. I forgot the name of it.
Bitter melon.
Yes, the bitter melon, exactly. The bitter gourd also, which is called as Karela.
Karela.
Yeah. So have these bitter tasting food and vegetables. They will support your insulin function. They will work and protect on your overall immune function as well in a better way. And it's not about just managing or reversing your diabetes, because it is an entire kind of an holistic approach to promote health. And that's what I enjoy about holistic wellness. Here we are not to kind of manage any disease. Yes, there is certain kind of dis-ease with the body, but our focus is to promote the health of your entire body, of the organ, the tissue.
So thank you, Yogi Sakha. That was really great information. At the end, there's a lot of questions about bone and joint health. So I would like to address them also, and I would like to know both of your views. So there's a lot of questions about arthritis, knee arthritis, and there is questions about back pain. So what I want to tell our viewers about these musculoskeletal issues related to bone and joint. These issues are usually treated in ways by modern medicine, by anti-inflammatory medications initially, then steroids, then exercises, which are physiotherapy, to that specific part, which is if you go to a doctor with knee pain, he'll see your knee and give you knee exercises. And if all of this doesn't work, they finally offer you a surgical treatment for you, all of this. What we follow at Holistic Care is to understand the problem of this person wholly. If he's come to me with knee pain, I always take out information, and I always review the whole person as a whole, understand his problems, which are his bodily problems, his lifestyle issues, and what are the problems in the other joints. So what we propagate is yoga, which is exercises for full body, posture correction through physiotherapeutic exercises, uh, definitely exercises of the part which is affected, like back exercises or knee exercises in specific conditions. We also try to inculcate guided meditations, which really help in stress relief, help in activation of the healing mechanism, that is the parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps in a lot in pain management. This what our topic today. I'm not a specialist of herbs. I practice allopathic medicine, so I am not practicing any herbs in my practice, but I'll definitely try to learn from these guys, Dr. Patrick and Yogi Sakha. And finally, if all of this doesn't work, then we consider judicious medications, and only then we could offer a patient surgery. So I am a joint replacement surgeon, a knee surgeon who tries not to operate. Uh, yes, Patrick, what would you like to add to this?
No, I love the way that you talk about this. Absolutely, because the idea of like surgery being the last option versus the first option, um, and really saying what are they doing to cause it, and with bone and I mean inflammation we talked about. It's just stop causing the inflammation, eat your way out of inflammation, use therapeutics, Ayurvedic medicine or specific herbs to deal with acute flare-ups, that kind of stuff. But when you look at like bone health and joint health too, so in America, there's lots of people with knee pains. Usually if they change their lifestyle within 6 weeks, they're pain free for most people, right? And but if you look at like bone and joint development, so there's a lot of people that do bone broth. There's the collagen supplements, but collagen for joints is made through vitamin C, and vitamin C is from fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and berries, legumes and greens again. So even at the like, how do you make the joints? It all goes back. So like people that are vegetarian, they're kind of told you gotta eat collagen, but it's from animals. But no one ever says where the animals get strong bones and strong muscles from, right? And so again, dark leafy greens is what makes an ox super strong, with just giant joints that are rigid and able to pull plows through their entire life. And horses and elephants, they all eat just a bunch of salad all day long and make the biggest, strongest animals, which have the biggest, strongest joints and the biggest, strongest muscles. So that's all I had to add to that. You're exactly right.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, Yogi Sakha. We will quickly address this and we will end this session.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is something which, in fact, I totally agree with what Dr. Patrick was mentioning. when it comes to joint health and bone health, especially the arthritis condition, again, it's a condition, an inflammatory condition. Cut down on all those refined stuff, cut down on all those preservatives and artificial preservative which you may be getting through your food, your drinks, your sugar, and include more of these green, dark green leafy vegetables. Include more of the herbs. What Patrick was mentioning about Boswellia, it's called a shalaki in Hindi. Boswellia Indian frankincense. It's a powerful way to support your inflammation, and it has been shown to work on healthy joints. Then ginger is again a great way to work on your inflammation and healthy joint support. So, yep, when it comes to managing these inflammatory condition of joints and bones, or in fact of any other tissue, do include these herbs, do include these green leafy vegetables, but most important, do exclude all what we know actually needs to be excluded, which is refined carbs, refined sugar, refined flour, refined oil.
Thank you, Yogi Sakha. I would like to conclude this session. Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick, for joining us. It was really fun having this conversation with you. We've learned a lot from you, and it's really great that you're doing this. Thank you, Yogi Sakha. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I would really like to apologize to all our viewers for not being able to start these sessions on time. We would like to apologize for the technical errors we had in the beginning of this session. If all of your queries would be addressed, please join our WhatsApp group, which we have made for the upcoming sessions, which we will have on related topics to holistic health. You can please also follow our channel on YouTube, Holistic Care Center, to be updated about our upcoming webinars. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everybody.
Namaste.
Thanks. Namaste.